Every step you take builds a better you.
Hi, welcome to the Adult ADHD class. My name is Sherry Lee. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and an ADHD coach who has a 35-year plus background in fitness and nutrition. My goal in life is to use lifestyles such as sleep, nutrition, exercise, and relaxation to enhance people's life, especially people with ADHD. ADHD has been a passion of mine for two reasons. Number one, it encompasses everything, so I have to be a master of all trades in order to be an expert in ADHD coaching. And also, I myself have ADHD and my children have ADHD. So I've always been very passionate about doing something to make a difference in other people's lives with ADHD. And I've spent a lifetime trial and erroring things, researching things, and developing programs and tools to help people with ADHD. I have been running this class live for 17 years, and now I'm bringing it to you via video. So I'd love for everybody to participate as much as possible, write comments, give me feedback, because whatever you get out of it, I can't tell because we're not live. And empowering you really empowers me. So I love to get feedback from you in regards to what's working, what you want more of. And I also adore the group interaction. So the more we can connect to other people that have ADHD and the more that we can connect each other, everybody who's gone through this training together, and the more tools and resources we can share. So to back this up a little bit, I look at ADHD people as being above average, very special people. I look at us like being really nice, fancy sports cars. The problem is that we forget where we're going. We might change lanes often. We might speed and not obey the traffic rules. And I don't think that we're driving to our true capacity. So what we're going to try to do in this workshop is we're going to do lots of different things. For example, class 1, that's today's class, we're just going to be doing a general overview of what ADHD is. And you'll also walk away with a great stress management technique that will help reduce your symptoms of ADD. And then I'm going to kick off the home practice that we do to increase accountability. And this home practice tonight has to do with organizing an exit station and a landing pad for yourself so that you can be at the top of your game and get places on time. So that's what we're going to be doing in tonight's session. In the second session, we're going to be looking at time management and following through. We're going to be looking at how you schedule things, what you can do to be more aware of your time, and what you can do to help yourself not drop balls. In class 3, we're going to be looking at the number one thing that people want to work on when they have ADHD, and that is procrastination. We're going to be looking at why you procrastinate, what you do instead, and really getting started with things sooner as opposed to later. So that's class 3. And class 4, we're going to be working on impulse control. So impulse control in your ADHD can run the gamut of being procrastinating and doing something else rather than what you should be doing, to anger management, to saying and doing things that you later forget or regret. You forget about it too. That's our ADHD brain. We forget, and that's part of what we do. And class 5, we're going to be working on communication. So that means communicating with your significant other, with your peers at work. I've found throughout the years that people have really wanted to develop their social skills with ADD, especially since our frontal lobes and our executive functioning is not working that great. And we oftentimes have problems interpersonally with people. And class 6, we're going to put it all together and we're going to look at how people make changes and create habits. We're going to be looking at how you can fuel yourself with positive self-talk to keep the good parts of ADHD going, to keep you focused, to keep you on track, to keep you at the top of your game. In every class, we're going to be doing something a little special. We'll be talking about exercise, relaxation, organization tools and techniques to help you stay on the top of your game. And then we're going to follow up with a bonus track on nutrition and a little bit of lifestyle and how that will help your ADHD symptoms. So before we get started, I just wanted to be clear with you that this class is educational. It's to build tools and skills that you're going to apply to your life. It's not considered psychotherapy, nor am I a medical doctor or a nutritionist, even though I get into some alternative interventions or complementary interventions for ADHD. I am not a registered dietitian. I am not a physician. I am just a marriage and family therapist, ADD coach, and a fitness and a psych nutrition specialist. But some general rules about the class is that there's 6 sessions plus a bonus section. So I really want you to attend all of them. You could, just get a little bits of it, but I really want you to get the full experience. So try to attend all the sessions. While you're attending them, I want you to be patient and supportive of yourself. And I'm also going to throw in there me. I grew up with learning disabilities and really bad speech impediments, so you will find that sometimes I mispronounce words. I don't do it because English is a second language. I do it because I have ADHD, learning disabilities, and speech problems, and I so apologize, but I'm so passionate about what I do, and I'm not going to let that stop me. And I hope that you don't let your ADHD or anything like that stop you either. It's just an opportunity to learn and be better. And last but not least, I really wanted you to respect other people, especially if we create an online forum. I really want that to be a respectful environment for everyone to be in. So I'm so glad that you joined us. And let's get started. So I really want you to think about one thing that you want to walk away with from each class that you do. This will help you be engaged, because when you're reading something or when you're taking a class, you should never be going in there passively. When you're passive about your learning, you're not going to be motivated to learn. You're not going to have that attention. You're not going to have the learning stick. But if you go in there with a specific goal in mind, you'll be a lot more, the learning will stick a lot more, and you'll be a lot more motivated to learn. So I'm going to ask you, what is it that you want to walk away with after taking all 6 classes? What is it that you want to learn? What is it that you want to do differently? How do you want to be different as a result of taking these classes? So I'm just going to pause and let you think about a response. It's better yet if you write it down. So I'm going to start with a definition of ADHD. ADD or ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. We slash the A, attention deficit / hyperactivity disorder. We put a slash in there because not all people with ADD have the hyperactivity component, but 85% of people with ADD have problems focusing with attention and also have impulse control issues. So we're going to take a look and talk about that. So ADHD is classified as an overabundance of normal characteristics that interfere with the quality of your life. So it's not like pregnancy tests. It's not like you're pregnant or you're not, you have ADHD or you don't. It's more that there's a spectrum of ranges from very little symptoms of ADHD over here, more symptoms of ADHD that really interfere with the quality of life, interfere more with the quality of life. And then you can go into spectrum disorders like Asperger's and autism, which also coexist with ADD. So I'd like to think of it as a total spectrum. Over here, you might have a little bit of memory impairment. You might have problems focusing and paying attention. And over here, you would have great difficulties socializing with people, reading social cues, and also problems with impulse control. So there's a big spectrum of people with ADHD. But in order to have the diagnosis, you have to have the symptoms of inattentiveness and impulsivity in 2 locations. So if you're an adult, you'd have to have it at work and at home. If you're a child, you would have to have it at school and at home. The old criteria said that it needed to be diagnosed before the age of 7, and now that has gone away because we know that there's a lot of kids that get into college that don't have it diagnosed when they're younger because maybe their home system, their parents, or their school held it all together for them. Then when they go away to college, they don't have that external support and their symptoms come out more. So it is considered biological, meaning that it is affected by our neurochemicals, specifically norepinephrine and dopamine. Those are the 2 main neurochemicals that are lacking in people with ADD. There's also new research that shows a lot more is lacking and different with the ADD person in regards to brain function and nutritional intake. And I'll go into that level of detail in the bonus section. But for right now, we know that people with ADHD have low dopamine levels. So we need to do things to raise it so that we can focus more. And it also affects our norepinephrine levels. So it seems to be hereditary. If you're a parent that has ADHD, the range goes from 25% to 50% chance that your offspring will also have ADHD. But here's the kicker. This actually cracks me up. The research says that if you have a family background of depression, alcoholism, there's also an increased chance of ADD. I personally think that's very funny because there's a lot of families with a background of depression or alcoholism, so that kind of includes everyone. But their thinking is that sometimes when you have substance abuse, sometimes that's unmedicated, untreated ADD, and people are self-treating themselves with the substance. Or sometimes with depression, since ADHD doesn't often run alone, sometimes with depression they think that it could be something else. So I think that's pretty interesting. In addition to that, it is the second highest heredity factor in all mental disorders. The only thing that compares to it is bipolar. And bipolar disorder and ADHD sometimes go hand in hand, and they're really hard to differentiate. But when we talk about ADHD and hereditary, it's really cool because in twin studies, identical twins, if one identical twin has it, you have an 85% chance that that other twin will have it as well. Bipolar is the same thing. Those are the only 2 mental disorders that seem to have that really high genetic factor. I think that's really cool because when I hear that, I think, wow, well, what happens to the twins that don't develop it? For example, I had, throughout the years, I had a pair of twins, identical twins that I had taken my class. And I thought, oh gosh, what about the 25% or less that have an identical twin with ADD and then they don't have ADD. Like, what happened to them? What made it different for them? So I think that the environment plays a factor in regards to managing our symptoms and perhaps turning on those genes in the DNA to have the symptoms. So here are some external factors that can increase the likelihood of ADD. So substance abuse, alcohol use in utero. I once had a client that's mother worked in a lab in the Silicon Valley, and the chemicals that she was exposed to at work caused kind of like a fetal alcoholism syndrome in her child. And I thought it was like ADHD on steroids. It was the most severe level over here of ADHD that I had ever worked with. And that was due to chemical exposures in pregnancy. Sometimes children can be born with the cord wrapped around their neck and get oxygen supply cut off from them, and that can develop into symptoms of ADD. And sometimes people have brain damage from head injuries, and that can develop symptoms like ADHD. I have to admit, through the years of teaching this class live, I once had this, I think it was a couple of years, where all these physicians were saying, hey, we have a lot of older adults with memory problems, and we don't have a place to send them, so we're going to send them to your class. So for a couple of different years, I had people with memory problems and Alzheimer's come into my adult ADHD classes. And you know what? They learned a lot from taking the class and the external tools that we use. And sometimes I like to joke that we're going to be like the smartest people in the senior center, because when we're younger and we know that we have memory problems and executive functioning problems, we're going to be a lot better at handling those, because it's going to be more of a habit as we age. So kudos to us. We'll be ahead of our game when we're older. Another thing that we know about ADD, two things. It's that our frontal lobes, this part of our brain right here, does not get as much blood flow as the normal person's brain. And the frontal lobe is responsible for executive functioning skills. And this means that I'm able to think about how what I say might affect you before I say it. I'm able to think about how my actions will impact my ability to get a raise at work or get the recognition that I'd like to receive. I'm able to stop myself from saying or doing things that are going to be problematic, that are going to get me fired. Those are some executive functioning skills, and people with ADD do not have highly developed frontal lobes. We don't get the circulation there. The neurons don't, the brain connection doesn't go all the way through there. And we're very impulsive and inattentive. So first, let's go over qualities of people that have ADHD. We usually have inattention and impulsivity, and of course hyperactivity. I'll start with hyperactivity since that's super simple. Hyperactivity, when you're an adult or when you have ADHD, isn't like an abundance of energy. It kind of feels like you have a motor inside of you, and you usually like to move a lot and change gears a lot. What I mean by changing gears is that you like to switch from one activity to another or have different work environments. So that is hyperactivity. The advantage of hyperactivity is that you can work for heck of long hours. I've had clients that have had 2 full-time jobs. I mean, it's been crazy. I've had people be entrepreneurs that will work non-stop. I've also seen a lot of athletes and a lot of people that have been very physically fit, and they thrive with their exercise and ADHD. So hyperactivity is one component of it, but not everybody with ADD has that hyperactivity component. but 85% of the people have the inattention and impulsivity. Let's take a look at inattention. People usually think of inattention when they think of ADD. So that is the inability for you to focus. That means that you're daydreaming. That means that you're just not paying attention. You can't focus in on the key things that you want to focus on. It's pretty darn frustrating and pretty overwhelming. People with ADD can be very forgetful. There's literally research saying that our ability to remember things isn't very good, especially for short-term memory and things like names. We usually have to attach it to something emotional for us to be able to remember it. Unless we're super focused on it, if we're hyper-focused on it, we will remember it. People with ADD, the inattentive type, also can bridge into something that we call hyperfocus. And hyperfocus is the opposite of lack of focus, and it happens at certain times, and we're going to talk about that, but it also happens if you're really interested in something. You're going to hyperfocus on that, and that is the opposite of inattention, because you will spend all your energy on that, and you know a heck of a lot about it. But most everything else, you wouldn't really remember the details, or you would be forgetful. In addition to not paying attention, being forgetful, not having a good short-term memory, people with ADHD are often very unorganized. And because they're so unorganized, it really prevents them from getting places on time and finding things, and it makes things very overwhelming. So we don't pay attention, we're forgetful, we're disorganized. We will also avoid tasks. It's called procrastination, and avoid following through on tasks. And also we avoid silly things such as reading directions, putting things back where they belong. All these little things have to do with inattention. But if you think about it, the thing that really I think is a good indicator of ADD is impulsivity. And it's not even in the name. It's attention deficit disorder. But the impulsivity part, 80% of people with ADD also have impulsivity. I think it interferes with the quality of life far more so than the inattentive. The impulsivity covers things like saying something that you later forget, doing something that you later forget, that ends up being interruptive to people, that ends up being angry, impulsive, that turns into addictions, that turns into buying things, it turns into procrastination, it turns into being distracted by the shiny object and not putting things back where they belong. What else is under impulsivity? I'm going to look at my notes. Very impatient. People with ADD in general are very, very, very impatient. And we can have, of course, employment problems. We have a higher chance of getting fired due by not following through, or due through social problems with people. We have a higher divorce rate because we're impulsive, and it's hard for us to manage our behaviors and manage what we say. We often change the subject, or when we're talking, we switch gears so fast that our listeners can't keep up with us, and we just look really spacey and dingy to them. We're always on the go, and we blurt things out without thinking. So those are some symptoms of impulsivity. And like I said, there could be some positive things about being impulsive. And some of the positive things about being impulsive are the ability to take risks without worrying about failure, because you can't remember that. Thinking outside the box and just taking chances, taking risks. Like I said before, I think that that's like one of the biggest assets of having ADHD is the ability to think outside the box and take risks. If I go back to inattention, some of the benefits of being inattentive is, I guess the number one thing I would say is the ability to hyper focus, because that is just incredible to have this ability to hyper focus on something. Also, one advantage is that you're easily to explode, but you also forget about it easily, and things don't stay with you. So that could also be an advantage of the inattentive qualities. But ADHD has to be so severe that it impacts the quality of your life. And I know that what I said, a lot of people experience inattention and impulsivity. But with ADD, in order to have the diagnosis, it really has to affect your quality of life. And it has to be in two places. And it can't be due to substance abuse or coexisting factors. And this is where it gets really, really, really complicated, because when you're an adult with ADHD, ADHD never flies alone. It always comes with something else. For example, I think 50% of the adult population with ADD also have depression. With depression, it could be a short depression like dysthymia, or it can be a longer depression like a major depression. You can also have some seasonal affective disorder in there as well, SADS. I think it's like 40% of people with ADD also have anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders come in the form of social anxiety, generalized anxiety, worrying a lot, and also specific fears and phobias, such as taking tests, such as socializing in parties, even spiders or bridges. Those are things that people with ADD have. I think it should go in that category of anxiety, because it is under anxiety in the DSM-5. But OCD is also something that coexists with ADD. And that's a very interesting combination, because you have people having obsessions like, oh no, I'm going to forget something. Then they do rituals to make sure that their obsessions go away. Some other things that go along with ADD are substance abuse. People with ADD are more likely to use and abuse substance. We think it has to do with the impulse control, that if you're really impulsive and there's substance around, it's going to be harder for you not to do it. It does make our symptoms on steroids, it makes them really bad. We also have harder time interacting with people, more problems socially than other people without ADHD. So basically, when you're an adult with ADHD, it hardly ever flies alone. There's something that always coexists with it. So it's really hard sometimes to figure out what came first, the chicken or the egg, the ADD or the anxiety and depression. But a lot of times ADHD was present when you were younger, and then as you grew up, or got a little bit older, you get the anxiety and the depression factor that goes along with it. Prevalence in ADD. So we think 4 out of 100 people have ADHD. We think 4% of the US population have ADHD. There's a lot of people that think that number is underreported. There's a lot of people that think that people in the criminal justice system or addicts also might have ADHD undiagnosed as an underlying condition. So this class is not to diagnose you with ADD, but you can go to your healthcare provider and do an ADD screening test to get diagnosed for ADD. Anyhow, when you're testing for ADD, I think it's super important to not just test you, but test or run the same questionnaires by your significant other, by your employer. if you were a child, it wouldn't just be the child taking that assessment, it would be the parents' interpretation, the teacher, the clinician's interpretation, and the child staff all together. Because the truth of the matter is people with ADD really have a hard time with self-awareness and do not report their symptoms as being severe as somebody else might report it. So it's really important that you understand that you're not alone. There's a lot of people with ADHD out there. There's probably a lot more people that are undiagnosed. And I think as we get older, more and more people will have ADHD symptoms. Yay. But also that it is underdiagnosed. There are a lot more people out there with ADHD than what we're aware of. It does seem to be one of the disorders that are on the rise. Autism, ADD, and allergies are the three things that are completely on the rise, especially here in the Silicon Valley where I live. And I kind of get into a little bit of diet stuff in the extra track that kind of addresses it. Sometimes the diet interventions or the markers are the same for ADD and autism, Asperger's, and dietary stuff like allergies.
Remember, every step you take builds a better you.